So obviously, with so much going on then, how relevant are today's primaries, given that Biden is already the presumptive nominee?
Well, you're right. On the Democratic presidential nomination side, it doesn't matter because Joe Biden won enough delegates last week in order to be the nominee. But there's a couple of things, of course, that didn't get decided. For example, just in West Virginia, they're electing gubernatorial nominees as well as a Senate nominee to run against Shelley Moore Capito. And, of course, there are local elections and statewide elections going on. And as you mentioned earlier, issues like COVID, we see the governors take a lead in that, public health issues, and as well as issues regarding social justice and the police. Those are local issues. So the people who went out and voted today did get to have a say in terms of what the future will look like in those states. But I think the big takeaway today is what you led in with, which is the problems in Georgia. And I think that's going to have a lot of people worried about how they're going to cast their votes and whether or not the states will be able to ramp up enough vote by mail by November.
So then, given concerns about the preparedness, also the protests, as well as the coronavirus, what are you hearing about voters about how much their priorities have changed since before all this began?
Well, generally, the voters' priorities do fluctuate during the presidential campaign season, but they often settle down right before the election, and it's usually the economy, it's issues of war and peace, and feeling safe. And those issues of whether or not you're better off than you were, and being better off means a lot of things. It just doesn't mean financially. It means feeling safe in your community. One of the things about these the civil unrest that we've seen and the protest marches is that civil rights oftentimes has a very short shelf life in terms of whether or not it stays in the public agenda for a long time. Now, the leaders of these marches are determined to keep it on the public agenda. In fact, they're going to be doing marches on August 28th at the end of the summer. They don't want this to go away because usually that's what happens. These issues sort of fade away, and then the economy takes the lead in terms of most important issue.
So then, with that being said, we're seeing obviously Wall Street is rallying at the moment, unemployment appearing to tick up, although there perhaps might be an adjustment to the unemployment numbers. Is there then a chance the voters will have amnesia by the time November comes around if the economy starts to pick back up?
Well, it's got to pick up a long, long way. And it looks, a lot of these industries that lost jobs, service industries, restaurants, all types of hotels, people need to feel confident in their economic situation before they start spending on vacations, on going out to eat to a large degree. And so those are usually what we call lagging industries. And to get the unemployment back up, it's going to take a while. So I think it still will be the #1 issue, as well as the comparative leadership styles of both President Trump and candidate Biden.
So then how concerned should we be that these large gatherings and protests, whether it's being in line to vote or protesting about the death of George Floyd, that might all lead to another spike in coronavirus cases?
Well, I think it's very, very likely, and it's not just those two that you mentioned, but it's also these early openings of states and people flocking to the beaches and going out and to restaurants and giving up their face coverings because they're tired of it and it's getting warmer out with the summer. I think it's very likely that we are going to have a second spike. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I am concerned about voter turnout, and I do think it is going to create a lot of challenges for people who want to vote and how they're going to vote in November.
And obviously we know that businesses were already dealing with the lockdowns, battling insurance companies for coverage regarding lost income. So then talk about the added impact then of the recent protest on businesses, whether large or small, because you have things like curfews and now protecting your store against damage, even if your state is open.
Right. And we've seen sort of a pullback in some of that. I mean, we saw a lot of the looting and the rioting going on early on. That's sort of toned down. But again, the question is how are businesses going to respond to this and how are local authorities going to respond to this? Again, that gets back to local government, and that's why these elections that we had today are very important.
And so what are small business owners telling you about their ability to reopen and also become profitable again?
Well, the few that I've been able to talk to have said it's going to be a long way off. and it's going to be a slow haul, and it's going to be very, very gradual because they have to, if they're filling a restaurant or a store at a third of capacity, they're trying to deal with pickup orders, which certainly are no substitute for the real thing. It's going to be difficult to start getting the employment back up, to start getting the revenue back up, and to start being able to pay all the bills that businesses run into.